Hi, I'm Kelly Grafton, and welcome to In the Know, a podcast where we explore what it takes to grow, lead, and thrive as a sales professional. Each episode, I'll sit down with sales experts to dive into the training, techniques, and real-world experiences that shape successful careers in sales. Whether you're just getting started or well on your journey, you'll hear practical insights and inspiring conversations to help you stay in the know. Hey, Memory Blue, what's going on? Kelly Grafton here. Welcome to In the Know. We have our special guest back. We have Miss Biddy Balducci back in the studio. Yay, very excited. And this is, we've done a couple of these with you, Biddy, so I'm very excited. But in case this is your first one, Biddy is all the way out in Washington State. So she flew in from Washington State to be with us here in Virginia. She is an assistant professor at Washington State University, where she loves to study cold calls. She loves to dive in and nerd out on cold calls. So the marriage between her getting to access Memory Blue's cold calls and us getting to access her knowledge of analyzing the data is beautiful. She has she's in a bunch of journals, right? Elite journals in the space. And, she has a PhD in marketing as well. So lots of knowledge in the table that we get to benefit from as a company as she goes and analyzes so much data. So our last episode that we just did, or the last couple episodes, we've been diving into a lot of your research. And specifically, the last one, we did vocal cues. So we talked about that informal language. Verbal cues, verbal cues, all the cues, informal and the formal language. And the conclusion was informal words plus formal voice.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the combination. So we're still learning. So hopefully you guys that listened to it last episode got to notice some of those things and took Biddy's advice not to change everything at once, but hopefully you're progressing. Yeah. So I'm excited to dive in today. So what's our topic today, Biddy? What are we getting into?
Well, today we're going to talk about politeness. But before we do, I have a question for you, Kelly.
Oh, okay.
What do you think of when you hear the phrase saving face?
Saving face. What do I think of? So I feel like saving face is like a psychological, I read it in a psychology book where where you're making sure the other person, if they're wrong, you're not like calling them out for being wrong per se, but you're giving them an out of like saying maybe this happened and they can say, oh yeah, that is what happened. They can kind of admit they were wrong through an excuse, even though it really was their fault.
Sure.
So you're saving them from like, I don't know, maybe they call it that because of a red face you get when you're embarrassed. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking of.
I actually love that. I wasn't aware of that, but that's a thing. Let's just go with that. So that's a great example. So saving face is exactly what you talked about. And taking a step back, that phrase has been around for a while, but not as long as I had thought it was until I started looking into this. But it came around in 19th century China, of all places.
Interesting.
And the idea of the face is that it's basically just the image that you project out into the world about yourself. So my face as Biddy Balducci, your face as Kelly Grafton. And so the idea is that we are all humans. We all want to be portrayed in a positive light. So saving face involves enhancing my image of someone else, or at least verbally expressing that, and reducing any kind of like embarrassment or things like you had mentioned before. So that is what saving face is. And the reason why I asked you about that, and that's how we started off this podcast, is because what I want to talk to you today about is about politeness. And politeness specifically as a way to help the prospect save face.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, why do we care? Why do we care if the prospect has their face saved? Well, the reason why we want it to be that way is because if you have a face-threatening situation where maybe you feel like someone's questioning your image or tarnishing your image in some way, it can lead to some things we do not want in
like
calls
hang
with
up.
prospects. Boom! Exactly. Yes.
You're calling me, and I would not keep that person on the phone.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So you could have refusal to cooperate, hanging up. You could have withdrawal. Maybe they're not hanging up, but they're still not engaging, and they could get hostile. And I'm sure some of our SDRs are aware of this. I have listened to, as a sidebar, like very, very many, like hundreds of calls from Memory Blue, if not, close to 1,000. And I know that happens sometimes. So we want to save the prospect's face because we want to reduce friction. So that's all that polite communication is. It's a way of communicating that reduces that friction to avoid offense.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the way we do this is through the concept of being polite on the phone.
Exactly.
And knowing you, politeness has a lot of different components to it. So when it comes to you teaching about politeness, what are we looking at here?
Yes. So politeness, as you noted, it is a little bit more complex than what we've learned as, children. I'm sure your parents taught you, your teachers, mentors, whatever. And some of it is exactly what you're thinking. Okay. So there's two components. I'm going to briefly touch on them, and then I'm going to dive into both in more detail. Okay. So the first component is niceties. Now, these are probably what you're thinking of when you're thinking of politeness. These are just polite words and phrases, stereotypical, please, thank you, stuff like that. And that helps enhance the prospect's image. You're enhancing their image when you use these phrases. And then there's something called deference. And that is basically, kind of softening the forcefulness of statements and recognizing the prospect's autonomy. Because to your point, they really do have the ability to just hang up whenever they want. So we're going to talk about how both of these things are needed to effectively save the prospect's face and when to use these things.
I was curious about that because please and thank you. And it just, for me, it sounds like, okay, out of respect for a person. So I would feel respected if someone used those terms. But I've also been in situations, this has nothing to do with me being cold called, but just in situations where people are over the top.
Yes.
That it makes me feel uncomfortable, like it's almost fake.
100%. I did a training with some SDRs in the Virginia office, and I had someone mention, can it be too much? The answer is absolutely. Okay. So as with so many things in life, you want to do these, express politeness and these niceties within the constraints of your context. Okay. So in calls with prospects, we're calling them out of the blue. It's unsolicited. They don't know us. And so we don't want to be overly complimentary. So these niceties, we're going to temper them. Now, in the real world, I might say something like, Kelly, your hair is amazing and you look phenomenal, and how do you fit that jacket so well? I could say all of these things, which actually are true, but I wouldn't do that in a prospecting call, even if I could see you, because we don't know each other like that. Now, so niceties, as I mentioned, these are just stereotypical polite phrases, and these are going to be things like that many of your SDRs are doing just inherently. Because this is what we learn as children, right? So just saying things like, good morning, how are you doing today? Or it's like, I'm glad I caught you on the phone. Did I catch you at a bad time? Just thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me. Like things like that are all examples of niceties that your SDRs are already using quite regularly. Yes, they're doing great. So to your point, you don't want to go over the top. And why niceties help in calls with prospects is because it shows that you value that prospect. And we do. I mean, we want to get the occurs. We want to get those meetings scheduled and attended. Yep. And so at the end of the day, our pay's on the line. So we want to make sure that they feel valued. And what I looked at and what I found in looking at the data is that the timing of delivery of these niceties is very, very important. So,
I just want to guess.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about the timing of using the niceties, are you talking like beginning, middle, end?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, right? I want to start off with thank you for taking the call. So maybe the front.
Yes.
And then I almost feel like the middle, maybe not so much. And potentially at the end, whether they took the time to hear me out and it's still they're not willing to take the meeting, or if they are willing to take the meeting, it's like, appreciate it. I just sent that over to you. So I just feel like maybe the beginning and end. That's just my hypothesis.
Okay, so your hypothesis is grounded in reality, in the sense that that is what we see in the data a lot.
Okay.
However, the best time, so definitely in the beginning, having these niceties is very, very helpful. And frankly, your SDRs don't really have to change anything to get those in, because when I've looked at the hundreds of calls, you're already doing it. Okay. So good on you. Oddly, in the middle of the conversation, that is when it peaks in terms of helpfulness.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the idea behind that is that these niceties, they show that you value them, and it establishes what's called reciprocity. So basically, it kind of goes back to like what we learn in kindergarten, like treat others as you would like to be treated. Now, we are calling them out of the blue. We can't expect them to be nice to us right away, but if we are showing them that we value them and that we're enhancing their image, saving their face, it's more likely that they're going to reciprocate in kind, and it'll set the tone for the conversation. So that's why this beginning and middle portion are really beneficial to having those niceties. Okay. Now, unexpectedly, because in the data we do see this happen at the end, it can be actually backfire at the end of the conversation. Oh, yes.
Interesting. So, okay, why is that?
Well, my intuiting after looking at these things is that the nature of the conversation has shifted. So we are trying to get down to next steps, action steps at that point, whether it is finding a different time to contact them, whether it is following up with a meeting that we've just scheduled, or maybe just asking them if they could accept the calendar invite we just sent. And so we are very task-based at that point. And so it kind of is like we've already established that reciprocity. We're moving on to different things at this point. So rather than valuing their themselves generally, we want to instead focus on valuing their autonomy, specifically around what we are recommending those next steps be, which gets to the next point, which is deference.
Oh, okay.
I know. So deference is probably a part of politeness that you didn't think of right away. And basically, it's just, you kind of actually alluded to it. You're like giving them the opportunity to kind of say, oh yeah, I was wrong about that, without feeling silly. That's kind of what it comes down to, is like, you know, for example, let's say you sent the prospect an email and they're like, oh, I don't have it. Oh, it should be in there, like, you know it's there. But, you know, rather than saying it's there, just check harder, you're like, oh, it should be there. So kind of softening those phrases.
Or even saying, I just feel like a common thing, oh, it may have gone into your junk or something like that. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is exactly what we're talking about here. Yeah. So all these things do is just they kind of soften the forcefulness of statements. And once again, we want to do this specifically around next steps and action steps, because it shows prospects that you value their autonomy. People like having their autonomy. They want to feel empowered to make the decisions that they feel best to make. And at the end of the day, they do hold that power to hang up at any point. So we want to recognize that they do have this authority, and propose those action steps. Don't just, wait for them to say, hey, when can I schedule a meeting? Just do it with a little bit of a softer approach. Okay. And how you can do that is with hedges.
Oh, we got another word in here. Okay. Hedges. That's an interesting word.
Yes. Okay. This is a whole different body of work in the linguistics literature. Okay. Basically, they are things like could, would, may, possibly, maybe, the list goes kind of on and on. Ooh, there you go. But they're things that you can add in to just soften the forcefulness of your statement. So you had said the example, it may have just gone into your junk. May is a hedge. Okay. Rather than it went into your junk. Or let's say you're at a natural point in the conversation where you are ready to discuss those next steps. So since you said XYZ, I think we could benefit from setting up a time. I think is
And
an
then
example. Yes, yeah, could, exactly.
Okay.
Because you are not saying we will benefit from connecting. You're giving them the autonomy to disagree, essentially. And then also with like accepting that calendar invite, rather than saying accept the calendar invite, if you could accept that calendar invite when it comes through, like that would be great. So if is an example, it's conditional, and so is could. So these are all examples of how you can kind of soften those statements when you want to move them a little bit further down the sales funnel.
Okay. So if I'm putting this all together, politeness at the beginning and in the middle, and then deference, well, really throughout, but especially when those questions come up, and a part of deference is hedging, especially at the end of a call when we're setting up those next steps.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, exactly right. So the only key is just like those niceties where you want to do that up in the front and the middle. There's a timing piece with this deference. You talked about the end, and that's exactly right. You do not want to do this in the beginning. Now, like I mentioned, the hedges, they will give the prospect autonomy, and we basically don't want to give them an easy out to hang up with us right away. We want them to hear us out. So we want to limit the amount of autonomy we're giving them to have the conversation in general. It's never going to be an ideal time for them to have this conversation. We want them to hear what we have to offer. So in that initial part, you want to avoid, if I could have a few minutes of your time. No, we're not going to do that because they don't want to give you that time. So avoiding those hedges in the beginning where it can give them an easy out, but using them at the end where you've already kind of built up the value, and then you're recognizing that they do have the autonomy on what actually ends up happening.
Yeah.
Now, if you guys are wondering, well, what about the middle of the call? Basically, it doesn't matter one way or another. You could use hedges in the middle. You could not use them. It has a neutral effect.
Okay.
So, if it's easier for you to just simplify and think of beginning and end for hedges, that works perfectly well.
Okay. That is really cool to know. And this is again based on analyzing all of these calls, and you're seeing successful calls where deference is saved really towards the end and not used in the beginning.
Absolutely, yes. So this is based on tens of thousands of Memory Blue calls over the course of an entire month for all of the offices in the United States. And I have some math lovers out there. This is basically controlling for everything outside of that interaction with a fixed effects model, if anyone's interested in that stuff. So it controls for things like the prospect's gender, the prospect's personality, my personality. It basically controls for all time invariant unobservables, i.e. like personality kind of thing. So so this is on average, this stuff works in these different time periods throughout the call.
Okay. So I think what would be helpful too, because I know our last podcast, we talked about the formal piece. So just so we're not getting confused with politeness and formality, can you, again, just rehash what those differences might be? So if they're trying to put everything together, once we're ready for that, or they're ready for that, what are those little nuances?
Yes. So as we talked about in the last podcast, the formality of language, it operates on a continuum from very informal and conversational to structured and rigid. Now, politeness, you might be both formal and polite, but actually it doesn't have as much overlap as you might think. So once again, I'm a professor, I'm a researcher. I don't just take those things as like, oh yeah, sure. No, I look at the analysis. And so I ran some correlations. For those of you who know that, but basically it's just shared variance. How much do these two ideas overlap? And the answer is not much. So the correlation between niceties and formality is only 0.05. So that means 5% overlap. If you think of a Venn diagram, it's pretty minor. Yeah. And then for deference and formality, it's actually negative 0.09, which means they're inversely related. But basically anything under 0.2 correlation is a small effect size. So
Okay.
sorry if I lost some people there, but basically they're not really related actually. And to give you an example of why that might be, imagine you are presenting to your colleagues on State of the Elephant. You are going to be sharing information about whatever you're presenting. Let's imagine that I'm on there and I'm talking about, my research, for example. I'm going to probably be speaking pretty formally. Mm-hmm. That is structured and somewhat rigid, right? I'm sharing very detailed aspects of the analysis that I've done. And so it's going to be very formal, but it's not going to be very polite. I'm not necessarily going to be throwing in niceties here and there. I mean, it doesn't warrant that, for example. Nor does the deference piece, because I'm kind of just sharing information, right?
Yeah.
So you can see very easily how you can have situations where you are very formal, but you're actually not that polite. Yes.
And it's not a bad thing.
No. I mean, they're just two different communication styles.
Yeah.
So you can overlap them, or you can run them parallel to one another and not overlap them. It's kind of something that we just do as humans. We like suss out a situation and figure out what is most appropriate.
Yep.
And in the example, giving a presentation, or maybe even just like, if it's more of a dialogue, if you're interacting with your teammates and teaching them an activity, you're going to be having that back and forth exchange, but you're still going to be more formal because you're presenting information and trying to guide, but you're probably not going to be throwing around a lot of niceties. You're not going to be really hedging that much because you are sharing information, hopefully, that you're very confident in.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a helpful distinction. Especially, I know we're gonna play some calls.
Yes.
So I think we'll dive into kind of like what it sounds like for what we've been talking about on this podcast specifically. Yeah. But is there anything that you wanted to touch on before we maybe give them some examples on this?
I think let's dive in. Okay. I have a comment afterward that I hope I remember, but let's dive into the calls.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So we have a couple different components here. So we have an opening clip that we'll talk about, discussing opportunities clip, and then a closing clip.
Yeah, exactly. And so I kind of broke it down into those three categories. Discussing opportunities is really just like, I call it like the meat and potatoes of the conversation. Opening is just that initial introduction. Did you get the right person? Have you established that they have a minute of their time that you can take? And the end is just wrapping up those next steps. So anything in between, that's that discussing opportunity. And as you can see on that slide, I have highlighted the example of red is the niceties, whereas blue is that deference piece. So you can see the hedges in that blue section as well.
Okay, and so that's what you want us to listen for, is using those niceties and the deference.
Yeah. Okay. So that screen right there will show you kind of what an ideal call would look like, where you have niceties up front and in the middle, and deference at the end. And you can see there is some deference in the middle as well. And as you recall, you can take it or leave it. It really doesn't matter. So it's a dealer's choice on that.
Okay. All right. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is the opening.
Hi, Kara. My name is Ryan Welch. I'm calling with Session Board. How's your morning going so far?
Okay. Yeah. So, very simple. It's not over the top. To your point, it's very context specific. Just asking how their morning is going. Did I catch you at a bad time would also be an example. Just things like, maybe they say, I do have a minute, you say thank you. It could literally just be stuff like that.
Okay.
So you guys are already doing that. So good work. The only thing with the beginning portion is to avoid using hedges, because once again, that is something that demonstrates that we recognize their autonomy. And of course they do have the autonomy, but we want to have them on the phone so we can present our value proposition, and we can't do that if they hang up. So for example, if you say, hi Kelly, it's Biddy, I was wondering if I could have a few minutes of your time, that is hedging a lot, and we're giving you the opportunity to say no, whereas good morning, how are you doing today, for example, is...
You're answering my question.
Yes.
But it's also polite.
Okay. Yes. And, did I catch you at a bad time? That is a way to get them to respond, but it's not going to be like if I could, like it's very, very hesitant, I guess I should say. So we're going to be more direct with that response.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. All right, now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes, as you call it.
Let's do it.
Discussing opportunities. Here we go.
Okay, sounds good. But I feel like, I totally respect you doing your research on time, but I feel like we can answer any questions that you have on our sources, on our creative and digital media teams, and how we integrate together.
Okay. So you could see highlighted there, building up that image with those niceties. They're respecting the fact that they're doing things on time. You can also see the hedges there as well. So things like, I feel like that's a hedge. Like, I'm not saying we could benefit. I'm saying I feel like we could benefit. Another way to do that would be, I think we could benefit. Something like that you could put in that middle if you wanted to. If not, it's okay. But that's what we're shooting for here.
Okay, I like it. And like you said, the niceties are important here. So yeah, I totally respect you and doing your research. So I'm just imagining being that person of like, yes, thank you. And it's just nice to hear that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And actually, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, like that is where it peaks, literally. And it's not always natural to incorporate these niceties in. So don't kill yourself if you're like, how am I going to do this? But it is very much the case, according to the data, that like there's a huge jump and it peaks in that middle. So if you can find a way to just maybe thank them for sharing whatever information. For example, that would be maybe an easy way to incorporate that nicety into the middle of the call in a natural way.
Yeah, or I'm thinking there's plenty of prospects who can't share their information.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Biddy, totally respect that. I know that you have a lot of sensitive data.
Yeah.
And then can continue going another way to have the nicety in there.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example.
Okay. All right. That's very practical. I feel like that's a really good takeaway for the team. All right, so we have one more.
Yeah.
And this is our closing. So our closing, we see a lot of blue here. So we see
Lots
a lot
of
the
blue.
difference.
Yeah.
And this is good examples.
This is good.
So, all right, let's see how he crushes this one. Closing. Here we go.
All right, cool. I'll send you an email with a white paper, and then maybe just send you a tentative invite for, I don't know, I'm free Wednesday here morning, and if that doesn't work out for you, you can always just move it.
Okay. Observations.
So my memory blue hat says you gotta be a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
Is like my first thought of, maybe we can always move it. It just sounds like it's gonna be something that they won't show up to. So the data is challenging me on this though, huh?
It is. Yes. It definitely is. And so once again, this is just like recognizing they have autonomy. This is kind of the make or break. Everything in our conversation has led up to this point. And we've already established that we value them by expressing these niceties and hopefully building a little bit of reciprocity with that. Now we're moving in. We are still recommending what we want to achieve, but we are recognizing their autonomy. And what happens when someone tells you you don't have a choice? You want to do the thing that they don't want you to do. So that's kind of the logic here, right? And it can be very, very subtle. It could be if you have time next Tuesday at 11, I could send over a meeting invite and would love to meet you on the call. So that was 3 hedges in one. Yeah. So you can do it like that as well. So that would be an example of how you can kind of just subtly, in a very, honestly, it's so subtle, I'm sure they don't even notice it on a conscious level.
Sure.
Like that you are giving them that autonomy, but that goes a really long way.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, this is the time.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of what I hear our managers teach is like, let's do this. What does your schedule look like this and this date? We'll find 30 minutes to put on the calendar. 0 deference in there.
Yeah.
So even just like you said, maybe just like, hey, why don't we do this? Even like why? Does why count as a deference? Why don't we?
I think
or am I stretching this?
I think it's not a hedge, but I think it counts for what the purpose of the deference is. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's pull up our calendars and maybe we have some time. I'm looking Thursday or Friday.
Yeah. and maybe is a hedge.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
So just like still direct, but a little bit of like
exactly
the hedging.
Exactly. The way I talk about this with my students, I teach sales, is I call it a pillow of politeness.
That's cute.
So it's just little words that make a big difference. Like, you know, maybe we could do it on Tuesday versus we could do it on Tuesday.
Okay.
So it's giving them a little bit of a sense like, okay, they're actually going to respect my autonomy and my decision to decide. And you know, you could do this even beyond, toward the end of the conversation, there are multiple opportunities in which you could do this. When setting a meeting, maybe they say no, either way. Okay, well then you discuss next steps, like, you know, would there be a better time for me to contact you? That's an example, like would right there.
Okay.
Maybe they did accept and you ask them, like, if you could click accept on the calendar invite so that I know you received it. That was 2 hedges in there. So you can use a lot.
Yeah.
And my recommendation to SDRs, because, you know, you guys make a lot of calls every day. So I'm sure you have your habits in place, and that makes perfect sense. My recommendation is to specifically come up with a couple of different script options for the beginning and the end. The middle is kind of hairy. It's kind of hard to know how people are going to respond. But that beginning and end is relatively structured as far as the whole call goes. And you can work to ensure that you're not asking if maybe they could give you a little bit of time in the beginning, for example. And you could also structure out like how you're going to make a meeting request. So you could do that and be like, okay, I see some hedges in here during my meeting request. I don't see them up front, and then go from there. And you can have, you know, you have like common objections, right? Like you probably get very similar objections from call to call to call. Think about how you would respond to those and how you could incorporate either niceties or deference depending on where in the call it is. That would be my recommendation, is just to like plan, because you know 90% of success I think is really just like planning and practice. And so this is stuff that, once again, looking at thousands, tens of thousands of calls, this is what successful SDRs are doing.
Yeah, the data doesn't lie, does it?
No.
I love it. So that's our challenge, and I like how you were saying, go look at your script. We have our sheet music. Plan it out, maybe upgrade it a little bit to have some of these in it and some different options. Play with it, role play it. We're huge. We love to like, you know, practice through role plays and with our, you know, peers and our managers. And like you said before, it's like what feels authentic to you.
Yes.
And I think it's so cool because you can, hopefully through the different examples that we shared today and just us even playing through examples, you know, you all can really hear the deference examples, the hedging, and then the niceties too, and where to put them, where not to put them. So that was very insightful. Thank you, Biddy.
You're
welcome. I love that. That was, and like you said, the data doesn't lie. So if you're anything like me, a little challenge with the last part, but based on lots and lots and lots of calls.
Yeah.
The data showing this.
And you can use different hedges that work better for you, because there was another SDR in the Virginia office who was like, saying maybe at the end going in for the close just feels too cushy. Like, that's fine. There are other like hedges you can use. There's a whole list that I've given, and hopefully you guys will be receiving soon. But like, even if, which is not, I don't think that's very like flexible, but it still adds a little bit of conditionality that can help soften that statement. So if we could set a time for Tuesday at 10, for example, that is enough. So you can play around with what works for you. You don't have to go using hedges that don't feel authentic. So I think that's super important as well. So try to see what works with you and what feels the best for you and your company and your vibe.
Yeah, that's great. And even like, I know some of the things we talk about is like, oh, these people are harder to call because of the industry, the persona.
Yeah.
So even taking that into consideration.
Absolutely.
With the calls too, so.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so insightful. Thank you so much, Biddy. This was, I love this one. I'm excited to see what you all come up with and putting these into their sheet music, like you said, planning it out, practicing, making it their own, and to, you know, to see the results really show it with their work. So that was awesome. Anything else to add?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is wonderful. I'm so excited for our team to go and implement this.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time in the know, and go practice, have fun, and we'll see you next time.